I did want to follow up on this story with the Washington football team. So the whole issue of them changing the name of the team is just totally gone by the wayside after this Washington Post story hit late Thursday through Friday morning. And I want to emphasize something I think has been overlooked by a lot of people who cover sports nationally or in different areas. And I've really only heard one other person bring this up. We all should have seen this coming, this issue with the culture of the Redskins. Think back to all the head coaches the Redskins have cut over the years and gone through, from Norv Turner, to Marty Schottenheimer, Steve Spurrier, bringing back Joe Gibbs, Mike Shanahan, Jay Gruden. Daniel Snyder has not exactly fostered a lot of genuine loyalty. And I want to read you a small part of this article. This is near the end of a lot of the article. This is not the juiciest part of the story. Most of you know the juicy parts of the quote-unquote juicy parts of all the sexual harassment and all the inappropriate things said and did to the female employees at the Redskins building. I'm going to quote this from the Washington Post. No woman accused Snyder or former longtime team president Bruce Allen of inappropriate behavior, but they expressed skepticism that men were unaware of the behavior they alleged. While Applegate and others did not accuse Snyder of acting inappropriately with women, they blamed him for an understaffed human resources department and what they viewed as a sophomoric culture of verbal abuse among top executives. The article goes on to say, quote, Snyder routinely belittled executives, according to 3 former members of his staff. Perhaps most intensely, Dennis Green, the former sales executive whom Snyder mocked for having been a male cheerleader in college after one executive staff meeting. According to one former Washington employee, Green said that Snyder ordered him to do cartwheels for their entertainment after a meeting. I think it's fair to say that the issue with the Washington football team is not an issue specifically of just sexual harassment and abuse of power and inappropriate behavior by executives and management. There was a culture that was manifested, cultivated, and enforced that looked at people who were below the upper management as less than them. And this is a reflection of Daniel Snyder. He can come up with all the statements he wants about how, I really dislike this happening and, this is really disappointing and we're going to have a thorough investigation. Listen, Snyder can say all that stuff he wants. The reality is that he is indirectly guilty of all of it. This doesn't happen in every organization. Not every organization has their owner riding them and belittling them consistently. Not every organization has people taking advantage of their positions of executive or management. Not every organization has an understaffed human resources department. Not every organization hires and fires head coaches as often as Daniel Snyder has. Not every organization has valued spending money on big-name free agents instead of building a football team from the ground up. Not every organization allows people to get away with despicable behavior because not every NFL organization is run by a miscreant who thinks that he is better than everybody else. And that's the real problem in Washington. You have an owner that has gotten away with so long a time with misrunning the organization, treating the people under him like garbage, making inappropriate decisions because he thinks he's right and everybody else is wrong, forcing his fan base to attend games at arguably, if not the worst, one of the worst dumps of a stadium in the NFL. And the reason why he can't get a new stadium built is because he just can't get along with people in order to compromise on getting a stadium built. Why is it that other NFL teams can get new stadiums, but Daniel Snyder can't? Because the guy can't get along with people. Because he's a jerk. And don't let these statements that he came out with, saying how he didn't know and he was unaware, we're going to have a thorough investigation, or we're going to change the culture. But the culture starts with Snyder. It's a top-down issue. If the owner of the organization is being rude and unprofessional and belittling the people who work directly under him, you don't think that's going to trickle down to everybody else? The owner was literally telling people it's okay to treat people like garbage. Furthermore, we cannot underemphasize the story that came out in 2018 about how the Washington football team was basically trying to coerce and force the cheerleaders to work as an escort service to take care of, quote unquote, the numerous financial benefactors of the team, sponsors, advertisers, business consultants, business alliances. There were cheerleaders who were told, if you're willing to do certain things, you can make a little extra money if you go spend time with certain people a little more. There were women who had their visas taken away from them and told they were not allowed to leave an event, or they weren't allowed to leave a country until they serviced certain clients. The Washington football team already had a history of abuse of power and mistreating people. This was not just a Washington Post story Thursday night in the Friday night this week. This has been an issue for years. This is now the second serious scandal that has happened under the nose of an owner who has proven himself to be a guy who can't get along with people and a know-it-all. You had the cheerleader scandal 2 years ago. Now you have this scandal where multiple people have resigned from the Washington football organization as a result. What's that old saying? Fool me once, fool me twice. This is the second time round. Snyder, you can't play it innocent anymore. You have been the overseer of an organization that has done more harm than good. You've insulted the intelligence of your fan base. You've embarrassed them with the facilities you forced them to show up at games with. You're an embarrassment to the National Football League and how you've run your organization, how you've treated people, how you can't get along with people to get a new stadium built, how you've belittled your own employees yourself, setting a precedent and a standard of an abuse of power and a behavior is totally unbecoming of professionals on a daily basis. Women were sexually harassed because you set the precedent that it was okay to mistreat people. Daniel Snyder. The cheerleaders who represent your organization were forced to do things and asked to do things that were completely unprofessional, unethical, and nowhere in their job description. But now twice you plead innocent of knowing what happened. It wasn't your fault, and you had nothing to do with it. And you'll do better, and the culture needs to change. No. What needs to change is the owner of the Washington football team. Because you, Daniel Snyder, have proven to be an embarrassment. I don't think it's a coincidence that this doesn't happen on every NFL team. All these things happened just with your football organization. The buck has to stop with you, Mr. Snyder. You are an overgrown child who doesn't want to take responsibility for what happens in the organization that you so depthly have showed over the years that you like to force things to happen and you don't trust the people under you, telling them who they should or shouldn't draft, telling coaches who they should or shouldn't hire for their staffs, belittling your own employees. And you didn't think that there might be a culture problem in your organization when not once but twice there have been scandals that happened with your team's letterhead on those people committing those wrongs? The solution is Daniel Snyder to be out of the NFL. That's the only way this really gets fixed. I had to get that off my chest.